I didn't see it coming. That is the part that keeps me up at night. It isn't the betrayal itself that haunts me. It isn't the legal documents or the lawyer's fees or the way my son looked at me when he finally realized he had lost. It is the fact that I let it happen. I watched it happen. For 8 years. I watched the slow, methodical erasure of my own competence, and I didn't just let it happen. I helped him do it. I handed him the eraser. I am 76 years old. I was a high school English teacher for 34 years at Shaker Heights High. I could spot a plagiarism attempt from across a classroom. I could tell when a teenager was lying about their homework just by the pitch of their voice. But I couldn't see that my own son was building a cage for me until I heard the lock click shut. It started on a Tuesday in November. I was sitting in a lawyer's office on Euclid Avenue, the kind of office that smells like furniture polish and old money, heavy drapes, mahogany wainscoting, the air conditioner humming too loud, making the room feel sterile and cold. My son, David, was sitting next to me. He had his hand on my elbow. He'd been doing that lately, guiding me, steering me, touching me, with a kind of performative gentleness that made my skin crawl, though I never said a word about it. We were there for the reading of my sister Eleanor's will. David had driven me. He insisted on driving me everywhere now. He said it was safer. He said traffic in Cleveland had gotten too aggressive for someone of my age. He said he just wanted to make sure I was comfortable. So I sat in the leather chair, clutching my purse with both hands, trying to look composed, trying to look like I wasn't terrified that I might say the wrong thing and embarrass him. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Peterson, who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, cleared his throat. He started reading. Standard legal phrasing. Bequests to charities. A small sum to a cousin in Cincinnati. David shifted in his seat. I could feel his anticipation. Eleanor had never married. She had no children. She had made smart investments in the 80s and held on to them. We all knew there was money. David adjusted his tie. He glanced at me, a quick, assessing look, checking to see if I was following along, checking to see if I was confused. Then Mr. Peterson looked up from the document. He looked past David. He looked directly at me, and to my sister Margaret Hartley. He read, "I leave my entire estate, including the house on Shaker Boulevard, all financial assets, and my collection of first edition novels." Because she was always smarter than everyone thought. Silence, absolute silence in that cold, mahogany room. I felt it in my chest first, a physical thud, like a second heartbeat, because she was always smarter than everyone thought. Eleanor had seen it, all those Sunday phone calls, all those times I'd complained about being tired, about letting David handle things. She had seen through the fog I was living in. She had seen what I was hiding, even from myself. She knew. David's hand tightened on my shoulder. His fingers dug in, just for a fraction of a second, before he relaxed them. "Mom, that's wonderful," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced. It was his courtroom voice, the voice he used when he was calculating odds and managing risk. I could hear the gears turning in his head. I could almost hear the math. Eleanor's estate was substantial. It was complicated. It was too much for me. That's what he was thinking. He was already adding it to the pile of things Margaret couldn't possibly handle on her own. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. I nodded the way I'd learned to nod over the last 8 years, small, grateful, a little vague, the nod of a woman who is content to let the men in the room do the thinking. The lawyer looked at me. "Mrs. Hartley, do you understand what this means?" I opened my mouth to speak. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I understood perfectly. I wanted to say that I had managed a household budget for 50 years and taught Shakespeare to teenagers, and I knew exactly what an estate was. But David answered for me. "She understands," he said. He leaned forward, cutting off my line of sight to the lawyer. "This is a lot for her to process," David continued. "My aunt's death has been very hard on Mom. She's been struggling a bit lately, with focus, with details." I froze. I watched the lawyer's eyes shift. I watched him look from me to David. I watched him make a decision. He decided I wasn't the person he needed to talk to. He turned his body toward my son. "Of course," Mr. Peterson said. "We can go over the specifics of the transfer at a later date." That was the moment. That was the inciting incident, as I used to teach my students. The moment the plot turns. I sat there in that leather chair, listening to my son discuss my inheritance, as if I were a piece of furniture in the room, and I felt something crack open inside me. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was clarity, cold, sharp, devastating clarity. I realized I was going to have to do something I should have done years ago. But I didn't know yet that I only had 72 hours to do it. And I didn't know that my son had a plan of his own, one that was already in motion. To understand how I ended up in that chair, mute and invisible, you have to understand the last 8 years. You have to understand the seduction of surrender. When my husband Tom died, I was sick. It was a Tuesday in March. A heart attack in the driveway. I found him next to his Buick, keys in his hand, looking up at the gray Cleveland sky, as if he were surprised by the weather. The grief didn't hit me like a wave, it hit me like a fog. I was exhausted, bone deep, tired. I had spent 49 years being the strong one, the organizer, the manager of the Hartley household. Tom was a good man, a dentist, a provider, but he didn't know where the insurance policies were. He didn't know how the mortgage was structured. He didn't know the kids' social security numbers. I did all of that, but when he died, I just wanted to stop. I wanted to sleep. I wanted to not have to make another decision. And David was there. He drove in from Columbus for the funeral and he just stayed. He took over. "Mom, let me handle the funeral home," he said. "Mom, don't worry about the death certificates. I'll get the copies. Mom, go sit down. I'll talk to the caterers." It felt like love. I want you to hear that. I want you to understand that. It felt like love. It felt like I had raised a son who was capable and kind and wanted to care for his mother. So I let him. That was my first mistake. I let him step into the vacuum Tom had left. A month after the funeral, he sat me down at the kitchen table. "Mom, we need to look at Dad's accounts," he said. I told him I could handle it. I told him I had been paying the bills since 1970. He smiled. That patient, indulgent smile that I would come to hate. "I know, Mom, but estate law is tricky, and you're grieving. Let me just set up a system for you. Make it easier, easier." That was the word he used. The bait. He moved Tom's accounts into a joint access arrangement, for convenience, so he could help me if I needed it. I signed the papers. I didn't realize until 6 months later that joint access meant surveillance. It started with small comments. "Mom, I noticed a withdrawal for $300 at the bookstore. Is everything okay?" I felt a flash of irritation. "I bought some first editions," I said. "I'm retired. I'm reading again." $300 is a lot for books, he said. "Maybe we should set up a budget, just so you don't burn through your savings." Suddenly, my money was our money. My decisions were our decisions. I should have stopped it then. I should have told him to back off. I should have gone to the bank and removed his name. But I didn't, because I was afraid. I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of making a mistake. I was afraid that if I pushed him away, he would leave, and I would be the lonely widow in the big house on the east side that everyone pitied. So I shrank. I spent less. I asked for fewer things. I started checking with him before I made big purchases. And every time I ceded a little bit of territory, he took it, and he took a little bit more. Then came the medical gaslighting. That's a modern word. I learned it from a magazine. But it fits. David started coming to my doctor's appointments 2 years ago. "Thought I'd tag along," he said, "just to be another set of ears." He sat in the corner of the exam room while Dr. Patel listened to my heart. When she asked how I was sleeping, David answered, "She's been up and down," he said. "A little confused at night sometimes." I looked at him, startled. "I'm not confused," I said. "I just wake up to use the bathroom." Dr. Patel looked at David, then at me. She wrote something in my chart. Later, she asked about my memory. "Any lapses? Any trouble finding words?" "No," I said. "Mom, you forgot where you put your keys last week," David said. "And you called me twice about Thanksgiving because you forgot we'd already talked about it." My face went hot. "I forgot because you never gave me a straight answer." I wanted to yell. "I forgot because you're busy and dismissive," but I didn't yell. I sat there, humiliated, while my son painted a picture of a woman in decline. I saw Dr. Patel write it down. Cognitive decline. ? That question mark hung over my life for 2 years. It changed everything. If I dropped a fork in the kitchen, David was there. "You okay, Mom? Losing your grip?" If I tripped on a rug, he was there. "Careful, Mom. Your balance isn't what it used to be." If I couldn't remember the name of an actor in a movie, he gave me a look. A sad, knowing look. He created a reality where I was failing. And the terrifying thing is, When someone tells you you're failing every single day for 2 years, you start to believe them. I started to doubt myself. I started to check the stove 3 times. I started to write everything down so I wouldn't forget. I started to stay quiet in conversations because I was afraid of using the wrong word. I became the person he said I was. Except with Eleanor. Eleanor was the only place I was still myself. Maggie, stop it, she would say on the phone. You're sharp as a tack. David is a control freak. Stop letting him treat you like an invalid. I can't, I'd say. He's all I have. You have yourself, she'd snap. And now Eleanor was dead, and I was alone in the lawyer's office, realizing she had left me a lifeline. But as we walked out to the car that Friday afternoon, into the biting November wind, I realized the lifeline might have come too late. David opened the car door for me. Mom, we need to talk about Aunt Eleanor's house, he said as he merged onto Euclid Avenue. I looked out the window at the gray city rushing by. I haven't decided what to do yet, I said. Well, we should probably sell it quickly, he said. The market is peaking. And managing 2 properties is way beyond your capacity right now. My capacity. We can set up a trust, he continued. I'll manage it. I'll make sure the assets are allocated properly, so you don't have to worry about the complexity. I didn't answer. We pulled into my driveway. The house I'd lived in for 43 years. White globboard, black shutters. The maple tree in the front yard bare and skeletal against the sky. David turned off the engine. I'm going to stay the weekend, he said. My stomach dropped. He never stayed the weekend anymore. He usually dropped by for an hour, inspected my fridge, criticized my housekeeping, and left. You don't have to do that, I said. I want to, Mom. With everything happening, the inheritance, the stress. I don't think you should be alone right now. He didn't wait for an answer. He got his bag out of the trunk, and his briefcase. The heavy brown leather one I'd given him when he passed the bar exam. He marched into my house like he owned it. I stood in the foyer and watched him walk up the stairs to the guest room, and I felt a vibration of pure panic. I went into the kitchen. I needed to do something with my hands. I filled the kettle. I got out the tea. David came back down. He had changed into jeans and a sweatshirt. He looked younger. He looked like the boy I had raised. He put the briefcase on the kitchen table, right there in the center. Coffee? He asked. I'm making tea. Right, tea. He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. He walked into the living room to turn on the TV. I stood in the kitchen. The kettle began to whistle. I looked at the briefcase. It was unlatched. I don't know what made me do it. Call it intuition. Call it Eleanor's ghost whispering in my ear. Call it the survival instinct of a woman who has been cornered for 8 years. I turned off the stove. I walked to the table. I listened for David. I could hear the murmur of the news from the living room. I lifted the flap of the briefcase. Right on top, sitting on a stack of files, was a document. It was thick, bound with a clip. The title was centered in bold font. Petition for appointment of conservator of person and estate. I stopped breathing. My hand didn't shake. It froze. I read the first paragraph. Petitioner David Hartley requests that the court appoint him as conservator of the person and estate of Margaret Ann Hartley. I read on. Due to advanced age and documented cognitive decline. Unable to properly manage financial affairs. Risk of dissipation of assets. Requires supervision for medical decisions. I felt like I had been punched in the throat. Documented cognitive decline. That's what the notes were. That's what the doctor visits were. That's what the we need a budget conversations were. He wasn't helping me. He was building a case against me. He was documenting my incompetence so he could take everything. I flipped to the back page. The date field was blank, but there was a sticky note attached to the front. File Monday a.m. Judge Higgins. Monday morning. It was Friday, 5 p.m. The courts were closed. The lawyers were gone. And my son, the man who was planning to strip me of my civil rights, was sitting in my living room, watching the evening news. He was staying the weekend to keep an eye on me, to make sure I didn't spend Eleanor's money, to make sure I didn't do anything erratic before he could file the papers. I was trapped. I heard footsteps coming toward the kitchen. I dropped the briefcase flap. I spun around to the stove. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. Mom. I grabbed the kettle. My hands were trembling now. I poured the water into the mugs, splashing boiling water onto the counter. Mom, you okay? I took a breath. I forced my lungs to expand. I forced my face into the mask I had worn for 8 years. I'm fine, I said. Just spilled a little water. Clumsy. David stood in the doorway. He looked at the water on the counter. He looked at my shaking hands. He smiled. A sad, validating smile. Here, let me get that, he said. Why don't you go sit down? You seem shaky. I let him take the towel. I let him wipe the counter. I walked into the living room and sat on the sofa. I stared at the television. 72 hours. I had 72 hours to save my life. The next 2 days were an exercise in psychological torture. I have read books about spies, about people living undercover in enemy territory. I never understood the physical toll of it until that weekend. Every muscle in my body was tight. My jaw ached from clenching it. My stomach was a knot of acid. But I had to perform. If I showed anger, it would be proof of my instability. If I confronted him, he would know I had seen the papers. He might call an emergency hearing. He might try to have me hospitalized. I had to be the sweet, confused, fading mother he wanted me to be. Friday night dinner was excruciating. He ordered pizza. He put a slice on a plate for me and cut it into small pieces. Like I was a toddler. I ate it. I thanked him. I asked him about his work. I asked him about his wife, Jennifer, who hadn't visited in 6 months. He talked. He complained about his partners. He bragged about a settlement he had won. I watched his mouth move. I looked at his hands that looked just like his father. And I tried to reconcile the boy I had nursed through chickenpox with the man who was planning to liquidate my life. I couldn't do it. The grief was too big. So I put it away. I locked it in a box in the back of my mind and focused on the clock. Saturday morning. 48 hours left. I woke up at 5. I lay in bed listening to the silence of the house. I needed a plan. The banks were closed. The courts were closed. My only asset was the phone. But David was downstairs. The house had an open floor plan renovation Tom and I had done in the 90s. If I used the landline in the kitchen, he would hear. If I used my cell phone, Where was my cell phone? I usually kept it on the nightstand. It wasn't there. Panic, cold and sharp. I got up. I checked the bathroom, the dresser. I went downstairs. David was already up. He was making coffee. Good morning, Mom, he said cheerfully. He was holding my phone. You left this on the kitchen table last night, he said. It was dead. I plugged it in for you. Thank you, I said. I reached for it. He didn't hand it over immediately. He held it for a second too long. You got a text from Mrs. Gable, he said, asking if you wanted to play bridge next week. I felt a chill. He had read my messages. He knew the passcode, of course he did. I had given it to him years ago, in case of emergency. I took the phone. I'll text her back later, I said. He made breakfast. Scrambled eggs. They were terrible, overcooked, dry, rubbery. David had never learned to cook. He put the plate in front of me. Eat up, Mom. You need the protein. I ate the eggs. Every bite tasted like ash. These are delicious. Honey, I said. He beamed. I'm glad you like them. I worry you're not eating enough when I'm not here. The arrogance of it. The casual, benevolent arrogance. After breakfast, he insisted on a walk. It was 30 degrees. The wind was whipping off Lake Erie. I don't really feel like it, David. Come on, Mom. Fresh air is good for the brain. Helps with the fog. The fog. I put on my coat. We walked. He held my arm the entire time. A tight, controlling grip, just above the elbow. We walked past the neighbors' houses. I saw Bill Henderson raking leaves. I waved. David pulled me along. Watch the ice, Mom. I see it. Don't step there. It's uneven. I know. He narrated every step. He broadcast my frailty to the entire neighborhood. Anyone looking out their window would see a devoted son helping his stumbling, elderly mother. They wouldn't see the prisoner and the warden. When we got back, I went to the bathroom and vomited. I washed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. Gray hair, wrinkles around the mouth, eyes that looked tired. But behind the eyes, something was waking up. I spent Saturday afternoon feigning a nap. I lay on my bed with my cell phone under the covers, turned to silent mode. I needed a lawyer. Not Mr. Peterson. David knew him now. I needed someone David didn't know. But who? Then I remembered Eleanor's will. The clause. Because she was always smarter than everyone thought. Eleanor had a different lawyer for her personal affairs, not the family attorney. Someone she used for her investments. She had mentioned him once. A shark, she had called him. What was his name? I closed my eyes. I dug through the layers of cognitive decline David had convinced me existed. Goldman? No. Goldstein. Gold. Alan Gold. I Googled him. Alan Gold, Estate Litigation Office on Chagrin Boulevard. I wrote the number down on a tissue from the box by the bed. I hid the tissue in my bra. I deleted the search history on my phone. Saturday night. David wanted to watch a movie. We sat on the couch. He put his arm around me. I sat stiffly against him, smelling his Kelowna expensive stuff I bought him for Christmas. I realized with a jolt of horror that he loved me. He really did. He loved the version of me that was helpless. He loved the version of me that needed him. He loved the role of the protector. Destroying my autonomy made him feel like a good man. That was the tragedy of it. He wasn't doing this out of malice. He was doing it out of a twisted, narcissistic love. And that made him dangerous. Because a man who believes he is righteous will do anything. Sunday, 24 hours left. I told him I wanted to go to church. He offered to drive. No, I said. I need the quiet. Mom, I don't think you should be driving alone. David, I said. It is 1 mile. It is the same church I have gone to for 40 years. If you don't let me go, I will make a scene. I kept my voice low, but I put a steel edge on it that I hadn't used since the classroom. He looked surprised. He backed down. Okay, but text me when you get there. I drove the Honda out of the garage. The feeling of the steering wheel in my hands was electric. I didn't go to church. I drove to a gas station parking lot, 3 miles away. I pulled out the tissue. I dialed Alan Gold's number. It was Sunday. I expected voicemail. I got an answering service. This is an emergency, I told the operator. My name is Margaret Hartley. I am about to be put under a conservatorship against my will. I have substantial assets. I need to speak to Mr. Gold immediately. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Hartley. The voice was gravelly, impatient. Mr. Gold, my son is filing a petition tomorrow morning. He has drafted it. He is staying in my house. I have until 9 a.m. Tell me the assets, he said. I told him the house, the savings, and Eleanor's estate. Meet me at my office at 7 a.m. tomorrow, he said. Bring your identification. Bring the will, if you have it. Do not tell your son. I can't get the will, I said. But I can get everything else. 7 a.m., he repeated. Don't be late. I drove back to the church. I sat in the parking lot until the service ended. I drove home. David was waiting in the driveway. He looked at his watch. You were gone a long time, he said. Father Mike wanted to talk. I lied. He looked at me suspiciously. About what? About Eleanor, I said. He relaxed. The lie fit his narrative. The grieving, confused widow seeking comfort. The rest of Sunday was a blur. I packed a bag in my mind. I couldn't take a suitcase. He would see it. I had to leave with nothing but the clothes on my back and my purse. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to David snoring in the guest room down the hall. I thought about the life I was leaving, because I knew, with a terrible certainty, that once I did this, I couldn't come back. Not to this version of us. If I stopped him, I would lose him. He would never forgive the humiliation. He would never forgive the loss of control. I had to choose. My freedom or my son. I lay there and I wept. Silent, hot tears that soaked the pillow. I grieved for the baby I had held. I grieved for the toddler who brought me dandelions. I grieved for the teenager who told me I was embarrassing him but still let me hug him. I said goodbye to him in the dark. And then I dried my face. And I chose me. Monday morning. The strike. I woke up at 5:30. I dressed in the dark. Wool slacks, cashmere sweater, my good boots. I grabbed my purse. I crept into the hallway. The floorboard outside the guest room creaked. I froze. I heard David shift in bed, a grunt. I held my breath. Silence returned. I went down the stairs, placing my feet on the edges of the treads, where the wood was solid. I got to the kitchen. I wrote a note. David couldn't sleep. Went to the 24-hour pharmacy for aspirin. Back soon. It was a weak lie. But it would buy me an hour. I went to the garage. I didn't open the automatic door. It was too loud. I opened the side door. The cold air hit me like a slap. I got in the car. I prayed the engine wouldn't roar. I turned the key. It caught a low hum. I backed out slowly, holding my breath. I didn't turn on the headlights until I was down the street. I drove fast. Faster than I had driven in years. I got to Chagrin Boulevard at 6:50. Alan Gold was waiting. He looked like a bulldog in a suit. Short, thick-set, no nonsense. We went into his conference room. He moved with terrifying speed. "We are creating a revocable living trust," he said. "We are moving all your assets into it immediately. You will be the trustee. I will be the successor trustee. Okay. We are executing a durable power of attorney, revoking any previous ones, naming me as your agent for now, just as a shield. Okay. And we are filing a preemptive objection to the conservatorship." He put papers in front of me. I signed. My signature was steady. Margaret Ann Hartley. Margaret Ann Hartley. With every signature, I felt lighter. I felt the cage dissolving. By 8:30, it was done. "We have filed electronically," Gold said. He looked at me. "Now comes the hard part, Mrs. Hartley. You have to tell him." "I know. Do you want me to do it?" "No," I said. "I need to do it." I drove home. I pulled into the driveway at 9:15. David's car was still there. He was standing on the front porch. He was on his phone. He looked frantic. When he saw me, he ran to the car. "Mom, where the hell were you? I called the pharmacy. They said you weren't there." He yanked the car door open. His face was red. He was sweating. I stepped out of the car. I didn't look down. I didn't look away. I looked him right in the eye. "I wasn't at the pharmacy, David. I was at a lawyer's office." He stopped. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "A lawyer, Mr. Peterson." "No, Alan Gold." The color drained from his face. He knew the name. Everyone in Cleveland legal circles knew the name. "Why?" David whispered. I walked past him. I walked into my house, into my kitchen. He followed me, stumbling a little. "Mom, what did you do?" I put my purse on the table, right next to his briefcase. I moved everything. "David, the house, the savings, Eleanor's money, it's all in a trust now." He stared at me. "And I revoked your power of attorney. And Mr. Gold has filed an objection to the petition you have in that briefcase." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. David looked at the briefcase. Then he looked at me. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked terrified, like a child caught stealing from the jar. "Mom, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. I opened his briefcase. I pulled out the petition. "Documented cognitive decline." I read aloud. David flinched. "I was trying to protect you," he shouted. It was a desperate sound. "Mom, you're slipping. Everyone sees it. You forget things. You're vulnerable. I was trying to make sure no one took advantage of you." "No one is taking advantage of me, David," I said. "Except you." I slammed the petition down on the table. "It's over." He stood there for a long time. He tried to argue. He tried to cry. He tried to gaslight me one last time, telling me I was paranoid, that this was proof of my dementia. But I didn't engage. I just stood there, in my yellow kitchen, and I watched him unravel. Finally, he realized it wasn't working. The mask fell. His face went cold, hard, the face of a stranger. "Fine," he said. He grabbed his briefcase. "If you want to die alone in this house, Mom, that's your choice. But don't come crying to me when you can't pay the bills. Don't call me when you fall down the stairs." "I won't," I said. He walked to the door. He didn't look back. He slammed it behind him. I heard his car start. I heard him peel out of the driveway. And then ... silence. That was 4 months ago. The scar is fresh. David hasn't called. I hear from his sister that he tells people I've gone senile, that I'm paranoid, that a predator lawyer got his claws into me and turned me against my own son. He paints himself as the victim, the martyr son who tried to save his mother from herself. I don't correct him. I don't defend myself. I let him tell his story, because I know the truth. I live in the house on Shaker Boulevard. It's quiet now. I handle my own money. I pay my own bills. I drive my own car. Dr. Patel apologized to me. I went to see her last month. I told her everything. I told her about the performance. She looked at the chart. She crossed out the question mark. She erased the doubt. But the house is different now. The kitchen doesn't feel like the center of a family anymore. It feels like a fortress. I drink my coffee in the morning and I look at the empty chair where David used to sit. And I miss him. I miss the lie. I miss the illusion that I had a son who looked out for me. I miss the feeling of safety, even if it was false. Freedom is cold. I want you to know that. Dignity is a lonely bedfellow. There are nights when I wake up and the house is so silent it hurts. There are times when I struggle to open a jar, or when the snow is deep and I have to shovel the walk myself, and I think, was it worth it? Was it worth losing my only son just to keep my name on a checkbook? Then I look at the picture of Eleanor on the mantel, and I hear her voice, smarter than everyone thought, and I know the answer. Yes, it was worth it, because I am not a child. I am not a line item in a budget. I am not a problem to be solved. I am Margaret Hartley, and I am still here. If you are listening to this, and you feel that fog creeping in, if you feel the people you love starting to speak for you, if you feel them guiding your elbow and checking your bank account and whispering about your memory, wake up. Do not let the comfort of surrender seduce you. Do not let them write your story for you. It will hurt to fight back. It will break your heart. It might leave you sitting alone in a big, quiet house. But the silence belongs to you. And that is everything.